When the United States was a brand new country, it didn't have a permanent capital. The government moved around from city to city, including Philadelphia and New York. This wasn't a good look for a nation that wanted to be taken seriously. The leaders knew they needed a central, permanent place for the government to operate. The decision was not easy, as many states wanted the honor of hosting the capital. The northern states and southern states argued over the location, each wanting the power and influence that would come with being the center of American politics. It was a classic early American debate, full of compromise and political maneuvering to get things done. The location for the new capital was finally decided in 1790. It was part of a big deal, a compromise brokered by Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison. The southern states agreed to let the federal government take on the states' debts from the Revolutionary War, which was something the northern states really wanted. In return, the capital would be built in the south. A special district was created on land given by two states, Maryland and Virginia. This new federal city, later named Washington, D.C., was situated on the Potomac River. This spot was seen as a good middle ground, not too far north and not too far south. President George Washington himself was given the task of choosing the exact spot for the new capital. He knew the area well from his days as a surveyor and landowner. He believed the Potomac River would become a major artery of commerce, and that a capital there would unite the country. The location was swampy and undeveloped, a far cry from the bustling cities of the time. But it represented a fresh start, a capital built from scratch for a new kind of government. It was a symbolic choice, showing that the United States was not tied to the old ways of Europe, but was forging its own path forward on new ground. The idea was to build a grand city, one that would reflect the power and ideals of the new republic. It wasn't just about putting up a few government buildings. It was about creating a symbol of democracy that would last for centuries. The placement of the President's House and the Capitol building was carefully planned to show the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches. This new city, carved out of the wilderness, was a bold experiment. It was a physical representation of the American experiment itself, full of hope, ambition, and the hard work of building a nation from the ground up. Once the location was set, the new nation needed a plan for its most important buildings. President Washington hired a French-born engineer named Pierre-Charles L'Enfant to design the layout for the entire federal city. L'Enfant had a grand vision of wide avenues and public squares, similar to the great capitals of Europe. He wanted the President's House to be a magnificent palace, a focal point of the city's design. However, L'Enfant's ambitious plans and his difficult personality caused him to be dismissed from the project. The job of designing the actual President's House then went to someone else. It was time to find an architect who could turn the grand idea into a real building. A design competition was held in 1792 to find the best architect for the President's House. Thomas Jefferson, who was an amateur architect himself, submitted a design anonymously, but it was not chosen. The winner was an Irish-born architect named James Hoban. His design was elegant and dignified, inspired by a grand estate in his native Ireland called Leinster House, which now serves as the seat of the Irish Parliament. Hoban's plan called for a large three-story stone structure that would look both powerful and graceful. It was exactly the kind of building that leaders felt would properly represent the office of the president without looking like a king's palace. The cornerstone for the President's House was laid on October 13, 1792. Construction began using a light gray sandstone from a quarry in Virginia. The building process was slow and difficult. The work was done by a mix of enslaved African Americans, free black laborers, and European immigrants. These workers cut the stone, laid the foundation, and slowly raised the walls of what would become America's most famous residence. It took 8 long years to build, and even then, it wasn't completely finished when the government officially moved to Washington, D.C. in 1800. The house was much larger and grander than any other home in America at the time. George Washington, the man who oversaw its creation and chose its location, is the only U.S. president who never lived in the White House. The construction was not finished during his time in office. In November 1800, President John Adams and his wife, Abigail, became the first residents. When they moved in, the house was still a work in progress. It was cold, damp, and unfinished. Abigail Adams famously hung the presidential laundry to dry in the large, unfinished East Room. Despite its rough state, the president's house was officially open, beginning its long history as the home of the American head of state. The early years of the president's house were peaceful, but that changed during the War of 1812. In August 1814, British troops marched into Washington, D.C. after defeating American forces at the Battle of Bladensburg. Their goal was to demoralize the young nation by burning its most important government buildings. First, Lady Dolly Madison was in the house as the British approached. She famously refused to leave until she had saved a large portrait of George Washington, ensuring a priceless piece of American history would not be lost to the enemy. She also saved important state papers before fleeing just hours before the British arrived. The British soldiers entered the president's house and, according to legend, ate a dinner that had been prepared for the president before setting the building on fire. They torched the interior, and the flames gutted the structure completely. Only the exterior sandstone walls were left standing, blackened by smoke and fire. The destruction of the Capitol was a huge blow to the United States. It was a moment of national humiliation. Many people thought the Capitol should be moved to a safer, more established city, but President James Madison was determined to rebuild and show the world that the American spirit could not be broken. Reconstruction began almost immediately, with James Hoban, the original architect, returning to oversee the project. The charred sandstone walls were so badly damaged that they needed to be protected and sealed. To cover the smoke stains and protect the stone, the exterior was painted white. This is when the building truly became known as the White House, a name that had been used informally before but now became its common identity. President Theodore Roosevelt would officially make White House the building's name in 1901. The rebuilding took 3 years, and President James Monroe was able to move into the reconstructed house in 1817. During the reconstruction, Hoban also made some additions to his original design. He added the semicircular south portico in 1824 and the grand north portico with its tall columns in 1829. These additions gave the White House the iconic and stately appearance that we recognize today. The building had literally risen from the ashes, stronger and more beautiful than before. This act of rebuilding was deeply symbolic. It showed the resilience of the young American democracy, proving that even after a devastating attack, the nation and its government would endure and come back even stronger. The fire of 1814 was not the only time the White House faced destruction. On Christmas Eve in 1929, while President Herbert Hoover was hosting a holiday party, a fire broke out in the West Wing. This fire, caused by faulty wiring, destroyed the executive offices, including the president's office. President Hoover had to evacuate his own party to direct the firefighters and help save important government documents from the flames. The fire gutted the West Wing's interior, but fortunately, a firewall prevented the flames from spreading to the main residence. The nation, already facing the Great Depression, watched as its center of power burned once again. Just as it had after the 1814 fire, the White House was quickly rebuilt. The West Wing offices were repaired and even improved, with a new fireproof structure. This was just one of many major changes the White House has undergone over the years. In 1902, President Theodore Roosevelt oversaw a massive renovation. He officially separated the president's home life from his work life by moving the offices out of the residence and into the newly constructed West Wing. A few years later, in 1909, President William Howard Taft expanded the West Wing and created the first Oval Office, forever changing the layout of the president's workspace. Perhaps the most dramatic renovation in White House history occurred during the presidency of Harry S. Truman. By the late 1940s, the old building was in terrible shape. Engineers found that the main structure was dangerously unstable. Floors were sagging, and the support beams were weak. At one point, a leg of first daughter Margaret Truman's piano fell right through the floorboards of her room into the room below. Experts declared that the house was on the verge of collapse. President Truman and his family had to move across the street to Blair House for over 3 years, from 1949 to 1952. The Truman reconstruction was a massive undertaking. The entire interior of the White House was completely dismantled and removed. Only the original exterior walls were left standing, just as they had been after the 1814 fire. A new steel frame was built inside the historic shell to make the structure sound and safe for future generations. While the renovation saved the building, some criticized it for losing much of its historic interior character. Later, First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy would lead a famous restoration project in the early 1960s. She worked to bring authentic historic furniture and art back into the White House, transforming it from just a residence into a living museum of American history. The White House is much more than just a house. It's actually a sprawling complex that serves many purposes. The entire White House grounds cover about 18 acres of land right in the heart of Washington, D.C. The main building itself is impressively large. It stands 70 feet high, is 168 feet long, and 85 feet wide. And to keep its famous exterior looking bright and clean, it takes about 570 gallons of a special white paint to cover the entire surface. The scale of the building is meant to be grand, but not so overwhelming that it feels like a European palace. Instead, it really strikes a balance between being a home and being a symbol of national power. Inside, the White House is kind of a maze of rooms, each with its own history and purpose. There are a total of 132 rooms, including 35 bathrooms, spread across 6 floors. The floors include the main ground floor, the state floor for official events, the second floor for the first family's private residence, and the third floor, which contains guest rooms and recreation space. And there are also 2 basement levels below ground. The house has 412 doors, 147 windows, 28 fireplaces, 8 staircases, and 3 elevators. It's a massive structure that requires a large staff to maintain, from chefs and butlers to electricians and engineers. The White House is divided into 3 main parts: the executive residence, the West Wing, and the East Wing. The executive residence is the central building, containing the first family's home on the upper floors, and the famous ceremonial rooms like the East Room, the Green Room, and the Blue Room on the State floor. The West Wing is the nerve center of the American government. It houses the Oval Office, the Cabinet Room, the Situation Room, and the offices of the President's senior staff. The East Wing contains the offices of the First Lady and her staff, as well as the White House Movie Theater and the entrance for public tours. Some of the most famous rooms hold great significance. The Oval Office is the President's formal workspace, a powerful symbol of American leadership recognized around the world. The Situation Room, located in the West Wing basement, is a secure communications hub where the President and his advisors can monitor and manage crises anywhere on the globe. The Lincoln Bedroom, which was actually Lincoln's office, is a famous guest room on the second floor of the residence. Each room in the White House is filled with historical artifacts and stories, making the entire building a treasure trove of the nation's past. The 18 acres surrounding the White House are not just empty space. They're actually carefully designed gardens and lawns with deep historical and symbolic meaning. The most famous of these is definitely the South Lawn. With its rolling green expanse, it provides the iconic backdrop for so many presidential events. This is where the annual Easter egg roll is held, a tradition that actually dates all the way back to the 19th century. It's also where the presidential helicopter Marine One lands and takes off, a powerful image of the modern presidency. The South Lawn serves as the president's backyard, a place for both official ceremonies and, private relaxation for the first family. The White House grounds are also home to several distinct gardens, and each one has its own story. The most famous is the Rose Garden, located just outside the Oval Office in the West Wing. It was established in 1913 by Ellen Wilson, the first wife of President Woodrow Wilson. Later on, it was redesigned during the Kennedy administration and is frequently used by presidents for press conferences, bill signing ceremonies, and special receptions. Its counterpart on the other side of the residence is the Jacqueline Kennedy Garden, which was redesigned and dedicated to her after President Kennedy's death. These gardens really do provide a beautiful and serene setting for official business. Over the years, presidents and first ladies have added their own personal touches to the grounds. President Jimmy Carter had a tree house built on the South Lawn for his daughter, Amy. More recently, First Lady Michelle Obama started the White House Kitchen Garden in 2009. This garden, which was the first major vegetable garden on the ground since Eleanor Roosevelt's Victory Garden during World War II, became a powerful symbol of her initiative to promote healthy eating and nutrition. The produce grown there is used in the White House kitchen and donated to local food banks, connecting the White House directly to the community. The trees on the White House grounds are also living witnesses to history. Many of them were planted by past presidents. There's a magnificent magnolia tree on the South Lawn that was planted by President Andrew Jackson in memory of his wife, Rachel. Other trees were planted to commemorate state visits or other important events. These gardens and trees are really more than just landscaping. They represent continuity, growth, and the personal legacies of the families who have called the White House home. They make the grounds a living, breathing part of the nation's story. The White House is unique because it serves multiple roles at once. First and foremost, it's the private home of the President of the United States and their family. On the second and third floors of the executive residence, the first family lives their daily lives, away from the public eye. This is where presidents have raised children, celebrated holidays, and sought refuge from the immense pressures of their job. It's a place of family dinners, homework, and quiet moments. This dual nature of the building, being both a private home and a public institution, is one of its most defining characteristics. At the same time, the White House is the most important office building in the world. It's the workplace of the president and their closest advisors. The West Wing buzzes with activity 24 hours a day as staff work on domestic policy, national security, and international relations. Decisions that affect the entire globe are made within its walls, in places like the Oval Office and the Situation Room. The White House is the ultimate symbol of American power and leadership. It's from here that the president addresses the nation, signs legislation into law, and directs the executive branch of the government. The White House also functions as a living museum, open to the American people. First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy's restoration project in the 1960s really solidified this role. She established the White House Historical Association and worked to acquire furniture and art with historical connections to the building and its past residents. Today, the ceremonial rooms on the state floor are filled with priceless artifacts that tell the story of the American presidency. Public tours allow citizens to walk through these historic rooms, connecting them directly with their nation's history and the seat of their government. This openness reinforces the idea that it is the people's house. Finally, the White House serves as a grand stage for American diplomacy and ceremony. It's where the president welcomes kings, queens, and prime ministers from around the world. State dinners held in the state dining room are elaborate events that showcase American culture and hospitality, while also strengthening international relationships. The White House is also the setting for national celebrations and moments of mourning. It's where heroes are honored with the Medal of Honor and where championship sports teams are celebrated. In every role it plays, the White House stands as a powerful symbol of the nation it represents. As a powerful symbol of American democracy, the White House has always been a potential target. For much of its history, though, security was surprisingly relaxed. In the 19th century, citizens could simply walk up to the front door and request to see the president. But as the world changed and threats against the presidency grew, security measures had to be increased. The assassination of presidents like Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy brought new layers of protection, handled primarily by the Secret Service. Yet, the building remained relatively open to the public for many decades, balancing security with the ideal of an accessible government. The modern era has brought new and more serious threats, forcing major changes in White House security. After the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, which targeted a federal building, Pennsylvania Avenue in front of the White House was permanently closed to vehicle traffic to prevent a similar attack. This was a significant change, really altering the landscape of the nation's capital to protect its most important symbol. The terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, led to another dramatic increase in security. Airspace around the White House became highly restricted, and security protocols were tightened to an unprecedented level to protect against new kinds of threats. In recent years, security has had to adapt to challenges from both outside and inside the perimeter. Incidents like the man who jumped the fence and ran into the White House in 2014 and the landing of a small drone on the South Lawn in 2015 exposed new vulnerabilities. These events prompted the Secret Service to once again rethink its security posture. In response, the old fence surrounding the White House was replaced with a much taller and stronger barrier, equipped with advanced anti-climb technology. This new fence is a visible reminder of the constant need to balance openness with the serious security demands of the modern world. Protecting the White House is a complex and never-ending task. It involves a combination of physical barriers, highly trained personnel, and sophisticated technology, much of which is hidden from public view. The goal is to protect the president, their family, and the building itself without turning it into an impenetrable fortress. The White House must remain a symbol of democracy, accessible to the people it serves. The ongoing challenge for the Secret Service and other agencies is to maintain this delicate balance, ensuring the White House is both a secure sanctuary and the people's house. Today, the White House continues to be a dynamic and evolving institution. It's far more than a static monument or a dusty museum. It's a living, breathing center of American life, constantly shaped by the people who live and work within its walls. Each president and first family who resides there adds a new chapter to its long and storied history. They don't just occupy the space, they leave their own unique mark on it. These contributions can be seen in the decor they choose, the art they display, and the traditions they start. First families often use their time in the White House to champion specific causes and reflect their personal style. Jacqueline Kennedy's historic restoration defined the White House as a showcase of art and culture. Lady Bird Johnson focused on beautifying the nation's capital and its highways, a legacy that can still be seen in the gardens. Hillary Clinton used the White House to display contemporary American crafts, and Laura Bush established the National Book Festival. Michelle Obama's kitchen garden became a powerful platform for her health and wellness initiatives. These personal touches ensure that the White House reflects the changing values and interests of the American people. The White House also remains a powerful symbol of democratic ideals, particularly the idea of openness. Despite heightened security, hundreds of thousands of Americans visit the White House each year for public tours. Walking through the East Wing and the State Floor Rooms, visitors can feel a tangible connection to the history they learned about in school. This access is a powerful statement about American democracy. It says that the seat of power ultimately belongs to the people, and they have a right to see it up close. This tradition makes the White House a unique and cherished national landmark. In conclusion, the White House is more than just a beautiful building made of white painted sandstone. It is the enduring heart of the American nation. It's a home, an office, a museum, and a stage. It has survived fires, threats, and the constant wear and tear of history. It has been rebuilt, renovated, and redecorated, yet its core purpose remains the same. It stands as a living symbol of the nation's resilience, its democratic principles, and its continuous journey. For over 2 centuries, the White House has been the ultimate symbol of the presidency and the American people, a true living legacy for the world to see.
Ready for a history adventure? Join our community. Subscribe to World History, smash that like, share with friends, and drop your thoughts below. Let's make history together. See you in the comments.